Chapter 13. Keno to impress. Now, in the beginning, during the rise of the machines and their popularity, it was only a club here and there that had them. And then, in no time at all, the greedy business and club owners all began to realize, hey, these things bring in quite a lot of money, and there's very little work involved. Isn't that the way business should be run? And so, like a hardy cancer jumping from the bloodstream to the internal organs of a pack-a-day smoker, so too, pokies quickly spread and became this season's must-have item for clubs, pubs, RSLs, sporting venues, pretty much anywhere that people gathered in numbers. The cancer grew, infecting every suburb to the point where now 2 or 3, as opposed to 1 pokie venues, was now the norm and the standard. Club managers began to complain of the venue down the road taking money off them. Customers felt no loyalty since they could just pull into whichever venue was closest to them whenever they felt the urge to have a punt. Hence, clubs began to rob not only the mug punters that frequent them, but increasingly each other as well. Encroachment, this process is called, something we watched with fast food places back in the day. So, club managers in their infinite wisdom began asking the question, what can we do to make our club stand out and be different to all the rest? Hence, members' nights and bingo nights, free coffee and other perks, reward cards for members, cash draws, anything to part these fools from their money. Hence, as I look over from my spot in the cage, I see techs installing the computer display and ticket verifier for the Keno system. Newman looks on proudly like an expectant parent, not far from the truth given that having Keno here is his baby, his idea, and its success or failure will be duly noted by management. Occasionally, Newman will ask the techs minor questions about how each of the games operate, which are the most popular and so on. And it's not that I'm skeptical of the club for trying new things, even if it is Newman who's leading the charge on this occasion. It's just that I do know a thing or two about the mug punters. Or at least I like to think I do. The people who play the pokies or the slots, as the Americans like to call them, are typically either pretty naive, fairly uneducated, or in at least some ways, pretty lazy either mentally, physically, or both. Why is that? Because it takes the least effort to play these machines. Step 1, insert money. Step 2, press button. Repeat until money runs out. Then go back to step 1. It's not exactly like blackjack where a player has to make decisions every hand. That is, should I double down, split, hit, stand, take even money or insurance? There's no thinking about the hand you've been dealt and what the odds are of going bust. It's just a computer program spinning at a certain rate over and over and over again. Newman's mobile phone rings then, and he steps into the privacy of his office. Probably his cake dealer informing him of an upcoming shipment, I think to myself. Fat bastard. Hi, Mike, I hear a new voice, one I don't recognize, and tear my eyes away from the Keno techs and their work. They just seem to be getting younger and younger, these new girls, to the point where my first question isn't, are you new here? It's more like, can I see some ID? And sure enough, the platinum blonde-haired, green-eyed girl in front of me in the club's uniform looks only about 18 or so. Chloe, it occurs to me, is the George Clooney in Batman and Robin of the gaming world. She's hot, and she knows it, but she's stuck in this crappy role, and so she's trying to play it in a too cool for school kind of way, like she's above it all. We get to talking, and I discover that her name is Chloe, and that she got this job through a family connection who recommended the club to her. Newman, it transpires, just happens to be her uncle. How fucking convenient. Chloe leaves, and shortly thereafter, as I'm looking over my cashier paperwork, I hear, "What time you close?" in a voice that is as grating as it is poorly spoken. I look up and spot the Chinese couple standing opposite me. No doubt their eyes are already searching out a red or golden machine with 1 or more 8s in the title. Too tighty, I reply in the same poor English with a smile on my face, because I've long since come to realize that when it comes to people who can't speak English, you can basically tell them all to fuck off so long as you're smiling when you do it. I serve a few more customers in quick succession, and then during a lull, I go over to the bar to clean up and look busy there as Luke makes coffees. You're not allowed to look, I tease Luke as I see him watching Chloe out on the floor. You've got a girlfriend, remember? Had, Luke corrects me with a tight-lipped half-smile on his face as he hands a coffee to one of the mug punters in front of him. But hey, shit happens. I guess, I reply. Thing is, well, that's Newman's niece you're looking at there. She strikes me as being kind of a stuck-up entitled bitch. And if anything, Luke's smile seems to get conspiratorially wider. Oh well, I think to myself then, I warned him. The thing is, I'm wonderful when it comes to dishing out cliches to the mug punters. I have a wide selection to choose from. There's my fallback line. Luck's a lot like being struck by lightning. It's not that you have to be in the right place at the right time. It's that 99% of the time when it does strike you, it's bad. And then there's the lame advice. I don't even half-heartedly believe in myself when I dispense it. Telling people that one machine is luckier than the next, after all, makes as much sense to me as telling a scantily clad white young female who has just stumbled drunk out of a nightclub that one dark alley is safer than another for getting her home. These things I do well. In the business of lying and thievery, I definitely excel. But giving someone, a co-worker or friend, someone I actually care a little about actual, real, truthful advice. Now that's a difficult one, particularly when the subject in question is women, not my strong suit by any stretch of the imagination. Over on the restaurant side of things, Christine is busy getting most of the tables ready for some family's kid's 18th birthday celebration. Occasionally, I'll notice her looking over in my general direction, but I know she's really eyeing the newfangled Keno machine, and it's not hard to read her thoughts. I'm pretty sure everyone in management is now asking themselves the same question. Is this investment going to make us money or end up just costing the club more than it's worth? People tend to criticize the attention spans of the young. Fads come and go from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to 100 different methods of chatting and communicating. Movies without an explosion or action every 5 minutes are all but ignored and so on. But as fickle as young people are today, the old mug punters here are pretty much on par when it comes to all things new and shiny. So we make a lot of fanfare about new machines, we put posters up around the place, we staff are ordered to talk them up and all the rest of it. The volume is cranked up to ear-splitting levels when someone wins on a new machine, and there's the catchy theme music too. And still, the old farts become bored of the new things within a week or two. So, what this you getting then, Mike? Ah yes, of course, Vula. Now my morning's complete. The club has Keno now. Well, it's about time, you know. The other clubs I've been in, they had it for years now. Yes, I'm thinking to myself. And no doubt you have a system for the whole damn thing, don't you, bitch? And as I listen to her rule of quarters and theory of odds and evens amongst other things, I find myself praying for something biblical, plague of locusts, a virus that only kills the truly annoying. In other words, 99% of the customers at the club. And I see myself revving my car at the other end of the car park. The little red Micra fishtailing as smoke pours out behind it, and then the grin on the imagined me's face as I floor the accelerator and speed towards the front floor to ceiling windows. The shattering of the windows followed by a violent collision with the machines, and the even more fiery and violent blast as the car full of explosives detonates, annihilating and engulfing everything in its path. A collection of the regular moans and groans that we usually ignore then becomes a symphony of screams as mug punters turn to ashes and machines to dust. The annoying music stops for once, and the rest, as they say, is silence. What you smiling about then? Vula asks me, and I realize I'm probably grinning like an idiot again as I stand there lost in my own apocalyptic and wonderful imaginings. Ah, honesty. What a foreign concept you are in the business of thievery, I wonder. If we met each other on the streets, would we even recognize each other? I think that makes a lot of sense, Vula, I say. Did you see we got the Phantom machine in this week? Vula just shrugs at this, though. They got 20 of them at Crown, you know, she explains. I went there with my friends the other night. Though I don't take it personally, since it doesn't make a rat's ass of difference to me. It makes it hard to upsell a new machine as being unique when you know there's another place that has dozens of the same one. Then again, the club will always have the advantage of being easier to get to than the casino, which is right in the heart of the city. Somewhere in the background, Newman is negotiating to get the club online to Cloudscape, supposedly the software that all clubs are using these days to pipe inane mainstream tunes into the ears of average mug punters as they tune it all out and tune in instead to Bet It All FM on their machines. This soon becomes a matter of debate between Luke, Kate and I, both inside and outside of work, not whether we'll get the system or not, as that much is a given. Even though Newman isn't exactly the most slick-tongued snake oil salesman I've seen at the club, the only things he'd have to mention are, but it'll save us money and increase efficiency to management and all the other clubs are using it. And they'd be on board before we all knew it. No, the real topic of debate is what kind of music will be playing at the club through the new system. Luke's thinking rap will win the day, since every 2-bit rapper he's ever listened to is always bitching about how hard up for money they all are in every second song and how hard it was growing up. Kind of ironic, Luke adds, when the other songs are all about how filthy fucking rich they are now. Money, Luke tells me at the bar now. It's the one thing these punters care about most, isn't it? Mo money, mo problems and all that shit. It's all about the big bucks. You'll see, this place will be rocking the fat rap beats. It just makes sense. Even though none of the mug punters will be really listening, and it's all just background noise as they play the machines in their heads, they're thinking, yeah, I can totally relate to that shit. I can't help but laugh at this as I picture a fat, balding, angry Joe with his chest covered in gold chains and blings all over his hands, walking between the machines telling other punters to keep it real. Or perhaps Vula will come up to me at the cashier's counter and tell me her machine ain't paying out, she's such a biatch Mikey. I'm going to leave this club now and be chilling with my homies on the east side at Forest Hill RSL instead. And then the final straw, Julius approaching the bar and asking for a 40 instead of his usual black tea, and then I'll know that the end times will soon be upon us. Fair point, I agree. But by the same reasoning, country music's got to be in with a shot as well. I mean, every goddamn country song I know starts out with lost the wife, lost the dog, and lost my pickup. What was Kate's money on again? I ask as Chloe walks past the bar, trying to look busy but failing miserably. Chloe doesn't really talk to any of us or even look our way, but every now and again when she does make eye contact, she gives us these nasty looks. I know that look. It's the one I hide from mug punters, the one that says, "It's your fault I'm here." Dubstep, he replies, and I just shake my head. Yeah, that'll be the day, I say, as I try and picture George doing laps of the floor as he obsessively tidies things up and occasionally answers questions from the old folks about what this awful noise is. Oh, George would explain. Yes, we're trialling a new sound system. It's very impressive, isn't it? Music playlists are downloaded directly from the internet and we receive them right here at the club. No need for anyone to be changing songs all the time anymore. It's certainly a step up from what we used to have. Sounds like static, the old mug punter would complain, and check that their hearing aid was actually working. No, George would reply. I believe it's... And he would consult a playlist. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's Skrillex. Seems to be a bit of a hit with the kids these days. But even if I Want to Kill Everybody in the World is my own personal soundtrack after a closing shift during a busy members' night, I just can't see dubstep making it onto our playlist anytime soon. It'll all be golden oldies, I tell Luke. Shit from the 60s and 70s when the baby boomers were young to remind them of the better days and all that crap. That's what we'll have to put up with. The old stuff. Only it won't be the good shit from that time. It'll be the absolute worst. Elton John and Rod Stewart, Michael Bolton and fucking ABBA, get ready for some of that shit. It doesn't have to be all bad, Luke suggests as I look over at my counter and spot a customer, then help him collect his ticket and pay him out while ignoring his gripes about his money problems. If it's all online, then maybe I could edit it somehow, hack the program or some shit. And I look over at him oddly. Hack? I ask in confusion. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'm sure it's nothing like you see in the movies. It's not, Luke says. But I know a few things about computers. I don't reckon it would be too hard for me to get into the system and change the playlist a bit to, make it more interesting. Adding a little spice to the mix, I suggest, remembering something he'd said earlier. Yup. When Newman does make an appearance from out of the office, maybe because the kitchen has run out of food, he looks somewhat worse for wear and red in the face. Apparently, he drove his car home last night with the windscreen still smashed up, and as I'd predicted he was leaning his head out of the window the whole way, now he's gone and gotten himself a bit of a cold. Got the wife driving me to and from work at the moment while it gets fixed. It needed a service anyway, Newman explains to us. But this is another bloody headache I just don't need. I could do without having the old ball and chain here at work. And as Newman shakes his head, looking in frustration at the mug punters as if they're the source of all his ills, I feel a new level of respect for them, which is to say some rather than none at all. Off in the distance, I hear the clarion call of Angry Joe swearing and carrying on, and I ask myself if perhaps we should be serving them free lollipops instead of coffees, so at least their mouths are occupied just long enough to stop bitching to us. But as far as customers go, they'd still suck. The days and weeks pass, however, and a few things become all too apparent during my next few shifts. For starters, Keno doesn't seem to be the money spinner that Newman promised management it would. Surprise, surprise. At the end of my cashiering shift, now thanks to Keno, there's just one more thing to balance. A bit more paperwork, and with the little money it's bringing in, it hardly seems worth it. Christine no doubt is looking over the same figures, and I just know she'll be starting to ask the question, when can we get rid of it? We need to sex it up a little bit, the Keno, I mean, Newman tells me during a quiet closing shift. And hearing these words, I all but shudder. Newman and sex or sex appeal for that matter go together like bingo nights and a nice relaxing day's work. I've tried to picture what his wife must look like. He's described her as being a ball breaker, and I imagine she's probably fat, dumpy, and as unappealing to the opposite sex as Newman himself is. I'm thinking a couple of promotions here and there, Newman says, as he looks at a printout in front of him. This other club has these Keno girls come in to move around the place, gee up the customers, young sexy girls to get their interest in it, and make them want to play. I'd like to tell Newman that the old guys in here are the typical chauvinistic dirty old men you hear about, and that there's only one thing they're interested in playing with when their wives aren't looking, and it sure as fuck ain't Keno. I suppose at least it'll give us some eye candy and something to take our minds off the monotony of this torturous job. But that's about as far as it goes. I've worked at a few other clubs now, a few busy ones and a few quiet ones. The one thing they have in common is every now and again they have dud ideas that go absolutely nowhere. The lottery is something that's been around for quite some time, with Powerball and jackpots worth millions of dollars. What mug punter wouldn't want to give it a go? But Keno is something that even to them seems like a losing proposition. They never see their friends winning it when they have a punt, and so they're not keen on it. All the same, I keep my thoughts to myself. Occasionally, I will offer Newman words of encouragement because it's important to be seen to be a team player. Sounds like a great idea, I tell him. And Newman now has this puffed up look about him as if he can see this idea succeeding and what it will mean to management. The grapevine, and by that, I mean the whispers and rumours I hear from other staff has once again left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. The current rumour is that George might not be coming back, and worst of all, that Newman just may be his permanent replacement. Christine even asked me what I thought of Newman's management style and how he got along with the other staff. And though I really, really wanted to tell her that short of appointing the Antichrist himself as George's replacement temporary or otherwise, there's not a worse man for the job, I just couldn't. Walking around the gaming floor, I spot my veteran friend, dressed in a brown suit with his medals over his breast pocket as he plays a machine and seems content and relaxed. So unlike all the other mug punters I deal with. "How are you today?" I ask him, and he looks over and smiles a toothy grin. "Oh, can't complain, he says in a gruff voice. What's the point? No one listens anyway. Yes, I suppose you're right, I concede. You've got to look on the bright side of things, he says. It's only after you've gone over the top and seen your best mate's brains blown out beside you that you appreciate just how lucky you are to be alive. Admirable sentiments, perhaps, but the old lady playing a machine beside him who's just overheard this part of the conversation and whose jaw has dropped as she turns a nasty pale colour probably isn't thinking the same thing. I, of course, wanting to converse with the customers and relate to them as best I can think it only fitting to let the old guy regale me with a few wartime stories. I mean, as an employee in customer service, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Connect with our patrons? Why, it's my duty. Sounds fascinating, I say, lowering my voice so only my old veteran friend can hear me and the old lady beside him can't. I'm sure you must have some amazing stories from the time you spent over there. Why, I can hardly imagine what it must have been like. Hell, he says simply and looks grim for a short spell, but then smiles again. Oh, sure, there were times when we weren't in the thick of it, when our mates weren't falling like flies around us, clutching at wounds, screaming in pain, or being blown to bits by enemy artillery. But they were so few. Vietnam was even worse, of course. Ugly, goddamn meat grinder of a war that was. Chewed young men up and spat them out like they were nothing. Because I like to think I know my lines from time to time, and the best time and place for them, I can't help but say, yes, I've only read about it and seen films about it. I know they used some terrible weapons, Agent Orange and napalm and... Landmines were the worst, the veteran says, and nods slowly as beside him the lady seems to freeze in place, unable to move, and yet also glued to the story, but somehow also a bit put off by it as well. Really? I ask. Oh yes, the veteran says, daisy cutters and bouncing betties. Such nice names they had for things that tore a man's insides out and blew his legs off, leaving them bloody messy stumps. One moment we'd be out walking on patrol, and the next, your best mate's clutching at what's left of his guts, and his intestines are barely held together in his hands, looking like fried. But what they resembled, I'll never know, because at that moment, the old lady next to him who'd been listening into the story leaned over to one side and vomited quite loudly and forcefully. I resist the urge to yell out, "Clean up on aisle 12!" and instead I walk around the mess and speak to the old lady in question. Are you feeling okay? I ask. Would you like a glass of water? Oh, God, the woman is saying. I lost my husband to a landmine in the war. Oh, but still, I have to bite back the response of, well, you were the one listening into our conversation. If you had any manners, you could have tuned out or walked away, and instead, I just say, I'll go and fetch you a glass of water. While I go and do this, my veteran friend keeps talking, and as I arrive back on the scene again, it occurs to me that he's been talking to her this whole time about the war. She stands on shaky feet for a moment, and then with a loud sigh, she faints dead away, collapsing between two rows of gaming machines. By this point, there are a few other patrons looking on, and though I guess I should say something to reassure them somehow. Step back, folks. Don't worry, she's going to be okay. I'm a gaming attendant. Just doesn't seem entirely appropriate. So instead, I go with, it's okay, everyone. She just got a bit overwhelmed by the heat. As I told Luke, it's not what you do, it's what you're seen doing. And it's not what you say, it's what you're overheard saying. Then, at that exact moment as the old lady comes to, and I give her some water to drink, I hear over the speaker system, "Mike to the cashier. Time for changeover," indicating that I'll be finishing up the cashiering shift. A good thing, because I was not looking forward to getting down on my hands and knees and scrubbing up that disgusting mess. After all, I know what we feed them on any given night. I could look after the old girl, the veteran suggests, and as I look over at her, I see her eyes open wide then, and she shakes her head a little. Perhaps it would be best if you sat down by the air conditioning for a little while, I explained to her. I can call a family member for you if you'd like, or an ambulance if you're still not feeling well. But the old lady just shakes her head again. I'll just take a seat somewhere cooler, she says, and stands again to do just that. Not much of a stomach, that one, the veteran tells me after she's left. She wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes as a medic. You may be right there, I agree. But still, I find your stories simply captivating. You'll have to share more with me sometime again soon. Yes, he says, and then turns his attention to the screen once more. I shall look forward to it. So shall I reply under my breath as I walk away, particularly if Vula's sitting in the seat next to you while you're telling them. What took you so long? Newman says in his usual, that is nasty tone as I return to the cage behind the bar to begin cashiering. I called you 5 minutes ago. You're supposed to have started already. There was an incident out on the floor, I reply calmly. A patron wasn't feeling well and she was sick. She fainted as well. I was looking after her. And of course, Newman being Newman, he skips right to the important part. She was sick? Newman asks a little nervously. As in she threw up, here in the venue. As in, you're going to have to clean that shit up, I think to myself. Yes, I say, with a little half smile on my face. Well, like you said, I should have started already, so I'll just get right down to it, shall I? And then Newman begins to look a little pale himself as he perhaps realizes that with great power and great status in hospitality comes the occasional dirty job. Christine is over at the restaurant preparing the staff for tonight's latest bookings, no doubt. I see Newman looking over at her, and it's not hard to picture his thought process. Where are all the other staff? Newman asks, which I take to mean, who can I pawn this disgusting job off to instead? And so with some glee, I explain it to him how they're all busy. Newman's face says it all, as the realization hits him. Wish I had a camera on me now. Right, Newman says. I'll take care of this then. And with that, he hurries past me out to where the cleaning supplies are next to the kitchen. There's already been a few strikes against Newman, the headbutting incident and other such things. A few more, and Christine may just rethink that permanent position for him. Kate, who's been observing our conversation, then comes up to me. Wish I could see the look on his face as he cleans that crap up, she says, and I know she's imagining the scene. I just tap her on the shoulder, though, and look up to the ceiling. There we both see about a dozen small black and white television screens, each showing a different part of the gaming area. The door to Newman's office is slightly ajar, and Kate manages to sneak inside, then to record the action on her phone's camera. Priceless, I say, smirking as she shows me the footage later that night. I wish I could upload this shit straight to YouTube. Yeah, well, Kate replies then. I just found out something that'll wipe that grin off your face. And I look at her questioningly. Why do the good times never last, I ask myself. And what's that? I ask. You know that Chloe girl? Kate says. Newman's niece. And I nod. Yeah, so I snuck a look at her payslip the other day, and you know what? That dumb bitch is on a higher fucking pay grade than the rest of us. She doesn't know jack about gaming, and I had to show her bloody everything. Fuck! I reply and shake my head then, looking disgusted. This is just going beyond ridiculous, Kate snaps. Why hasn't management done something about it? Because he's saving them money, I reply, and the bottom line is the bottom line. Then the smile returns, until it's his bottom on the line. What's that supposed to mean? Kate asks. Don't worry, I explain. Luke and I, well, we've been working on a few things.